Hello and welcome to Journal. I'm Steve Kendall. If you're a local sports fan, you'll probably recognize the face and the voice of our guest for Journal today. It's Tom Cole. He's an author, a coach, a sports personality around Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. And we're going to find out a lot more about him because there's more than just those 3 or 4 things. So, Tom Cole, welcome to the Journal today.
Steve, it's an honor to be with you. I'm proud to be here. Thank you so very much.
And thank you for doing this. So kind of just tell us a little bit about your story, because you're kind of like, I want to say, we throw the term Renaissance man around a lot, but you've done a lot of different things, a lot of it tied to education, a lot of it tied to sports, and you're an author. We've got pictures of your books back there. So just talk a little about your journey a little bit, and then we'll delve into some of the details, the specifics of this.
Well, my journey should be written across the top, Steve. Dumb luck.
Okay.
I truly, it's been dumb luck. I've just kind of fallen into so many things. My mom told me a long time ago, she was a pretty smart lady, the smartest person I knew. She told me, when an opportunity presents itself, say yes. And she said that, she told me, the worst thing that can happen to you is you find out that, well, okay, it's not for you, or you're not good at that, but you find out. And you may find out the converse, that you are good at it, and it can be a career. So that's really been, for me, it's been privileged to, I got to play. I was the first quarterback in the history of St. John's High School, which I was kind of proud of. That was a great experience. I coached and taught history and English there for about 22 years. Coached in college at Adrian, did a little consulting at Michigan with their quarterbacks. So I got to play, coach, and then the broadcasting, again, dumb luck, Steve. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I was practice one day at St. John's, and somebody from Buckeye Cable came out there and went to our head coach, Fred Beyer, who's a really good guy, great guy. He's in every Hall of Fame in America, and deservedly so. And they said, we're going to start a Buckeye Cable game of the week, and would you like to do color on the game, right?
Yeah.
Fred was not a media guy. He didn't like the media at all, and he said no, absolutely no. But he says, I've got a guy here on staff.
Yeah.
He said, he might not be terrible. So they came and asked me, and I did the Buckeye game of the week, one game,
Right.
One football game a week, and for Buckeye Cable. And I did that. It was a great experience. I had never done anything like that before, but back to what my mom said, give it a shot.
Give it a shot and see what happens. Sure.
So Alan Block got the idea for BCSN, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week sports channel. There's nothing like it in the country. Even today, there's nothing like it in the country. They cover a myriad of sports, boys and girls evenly. The girls get the exact same amount of opportunities. And BCSN came to me and said, hey, you're not terrible. You want to do BCSN? I didn't know what BCSN was. I didn't know what it could be, what the possibilities were.
How long it was going to be around, any of that,
100%. And so I've done that. I did that for 20 years, and their 20-year anniversary is coming up in January. I did the first show at Owens Community College, I think January 4th. So 20 years this January.
Wow.
And I've retired a couple times from BCSN, and I keep coming back. They kindly asked me to do things, so I'm doing some things with them again. But so that broadcasting experience was absolutely incredible. I did for a wide swath of years, Bowling Green football, Bowling Green basketball, which was a real privilege. People at BG treated us so well. I mean, because we did a lot of games. Yeah. And most people treat you okay, but Bowling Green was always warm, inviting, friendly. What can we do for you? Yeah. So that was a great experience. I saw great student athletes at Bowling Green. It was a real great experience. And then I've always been kind of a writer. I've written articles for magazines and that type thing. And then I started writing these novelettes, kind of taking football experiences and writing with those. And then I also write songs and kind of a BMI songwriter.
Yeah, so I saw that in the bio too. Like I say, there's a lot. There's more than just the sports part.
Well, if you're not really good at anything, you kind of, Steve, I found out you spread it out. And then they don't catch up with you. No,
it takes them a while to figure out.
It takes them a while to figure out that you have no skill and you have no talent.
Yeah.
So,
but they're still on the last thing.
Yeah. You just go on to something else before they find out.
One step ahead of them. Yeah. Now, when you talk about the people you've worked with, like at Bowling Green, who were some of the people that you shared the microphone with during those times?
Greg Franke. Greg, I think has broadcast on this channel, I think, in the past, and he's a remarkable guy. He's done more games on BCSN than anybody in the history of the organization. He's a consummate play-by-play guy. And I'll tell you, play-by-play is hard to do. People criticize, like, the guys on ESPN and all that.
Yeah.
This guy stinks and this guy's that. And they don't understand when you're sitting in your living room in your pajamas.
Yeah, it's
easy to call the game, but when you're on air, it's totally different. And Greg's a consummate broadcaster. BCSN's lucky to have him.
Yeah. Now, when you look at over the course of your career with the broadcasting part, how different is it in year 18, 19, 20 that was maybe the first time you did? Obviously, the technology's different, but has other things changed around it that makes it a challenge to do the games compared to what it was?
The technology, that's a good question, Steve. The technology is way different. When I look at the very first broadcast that we did, it was almost like you could be running by candlelight. I mean, it really was, it was a rudimentary start. I mean, it was a startup organization. Everything was new, and you watch the early shows and you go, that's a little rough, but through repetition, I think broadcasting is muscle memory. Through repetition, you've hosted so many shows, you're going to get better and better and better and better at doing it, just the sheer volume and repetition of it, and I think that's what happened at BCSN.
Well, and if you look back too, even if you look at network news, if you see old clips from the 60s, 70s, the way the sets looked is totally different. And you think, wow, that looks really low, low production value. But
it's dark, the studio's dark. Look at the early ESPN broadcast. Whoa! I mean, it looked like they're shot in a basement.
Which they might have been. Actually,
they could have been.
At that point. But it is interesting. Now, with your books, and we're going to obviously go more detail because we're coming toward the end of the segment. You've written 4 books so far, and we've got pictures of them up here behind us.
Thank you for doing that.
And I noticed that they kind of have a range of things, because Black in the Pocket is a kind of a serious addressing of an issue that had plagued sports for a long, long time, football especially. When you sat down to each of those books, was there one that kind of stands out that you're like, I really love doing that book? That was the one that if somebody said, what was my favorite book? What's your favorite book of the ones you've done so far? Probably the next one's your favorite one, right?
And Steve, you're good at this. That's a great question, and they're all different. They're all kind of like your kids in a way. Like the first one, Benny and Babe, is a kid's sports story, and I use personification where kind of like the old Mark Fidrich thing. The baseball could talk to the little kid. He was struggling as a pitcher, and one day this baseball comes and it's talking to him about, hey, don't worry, Benny, just throw the ball up there. I'll take care of the rest. And he strikes out all these guys, and Benny suddenly goes from being a terrible pitcher to now he's the star of the team. And all the kid needed was confidence. And at the end of the book, Benny feels like Babe helped him, the talking baseball, and he said, I've got to help him get back to the majors. He was a Major League Baseball, somehow got out of so he begged his dad to take him to a San Diego Padres game, and he took Babe with him. Somebody hit a home run in the stands next to Benny, so he took Babe
and threw him
back onto the field, and Babe was back in the
majors. Yeah, what a great ending. Great story. So we've got more great stories with Tom Cole coming up. Back in just a moment here on The Journal. Thank you for staying with us on The Journal. Our guest is Tom Cole, author, athlete, sports personality, announcer, pretty much a little bit of everything, songwriter. We talked about one of your books, Benny and the Babe, but behind us, of course, if people are seeing what's up behind us on the monitors, are 3 of your other books. So talk a little about each of those, because they all have a unique perspective on the story they're telling. And the one thing that always amazes me about writers, and you're no different, the imagination you use with Benny and the Babe. The baseball story, I mean, for a lot of people, you just don't have that skill where you could take that and turn that into your imagination led you to put that whole story together. So talk a little about your creative process, then we'll talk in more detail about the books.
Well, first of all, Steve, I truly believe that, I'm nothing special. I just wrote, and people said, I can't write, I can't do it, I can't. Yes, you can. Yeah. You get up and you have a designated time, and you're going to write. And the first things you write might not be that good. People always say, well, I could never write a book. And I say, yes, you can.
Yeah, and you got to start.
You have to, Steve, you're a smart man. You have to start. And there's an easy way to do it. Not easy, but I think it would make it easier for people that haven't written. What you do is, say your book's going to be 12 chapters, whatever.
Yeah.
You write down the title of each chapter, right? So I've got 12 chapters. I've written out 12. I've done nothing else but written the chapter titles. And then you pick where you want to start. People have trouble going in sequential order.
Right.
They have trouble starting from the very beginning and writing it all the way through to the end. So the way to do the book is, say, maybe chapter 12 or chapter 10 is something that I really feel strongly about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write that one out. That one's done. Then I'll go to chapter 6. Okay, I've got something on 6. When you have to try and write it from A to Z all the way
in
through,
sequence, it just
it's
doesn't work.
much tougher. This way, it allows you to get started and you start filling in the chapters.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the process. And I think everybody has a book in them. Honestly, guys, when you write something like that, you learn things about yourself, because it's not easy, but it's a great process and it's fun. Yeah. So
but I'm always impressed by because we've had children's book people from all writing different levels.
Yeah.
It's like the things that they come up with, the ideas. It's finding that idea, and I guess you are right. I mean, the first time you wrote a song, it probably wasn't the best song you ever wrote. Sometimes people luck into it the first time, and that's the only one they have.
The last one I wrote wasn't that good. But the baseball thing I stole from Mark Fidrich.
Yeah.
Fidrich used to talk to the baseball all the time, and I thought, well, what if the baseball was talking back to Fidrich and then subtract Mark and put in a younger baseball player, and there you go.
See but that's the genius of it, is being able to say, take that one piece of reality and then turn it into this larger imaginative story that feels like reality when you read the book.
Yes.
Even though you're thinking baseballs don't talk, but in this case this one did. So talk about your other books a little bit, because obviously there's incredible stories in each one. I think that's what's amazing about it too.
The one called One Last Fall, it's about and again, they're all things I pretty much experienced in some form as a player or as a coach. It's an aging quarterback. He plays on a professional team. He's an aging quarterback, good guy, high character guy. His skills are starting to diminish. He's just hanging on for one more season. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life after football, but he's going to have to find something, but he's hanging on. The young quarterback who's the star of the team, and he's the guy, he's the star, he gets paid the money. He's kind of a jerk. He's not nice to people. He's self-centered. He's not a team guy. And this quarterback, the older gentleman, is the glue that holds the team together. He does all the little things to keep people on task, on page. And the theme to me was, how many organizations do you know that the people behind the scenes, some of them are really the total key for the operation to work, and then other people might not know this, but they're the key. And sometimes the star is not the person that's really holding the thing together.
Making it all work.
Yeah,
they're out in front. They're taking the credit. They get all the flash from it. But really, all the gears are turning with somebody else at the wheel, kind of.
And all the people that I put in One Last Fall were basically people I had met or coached or played against, those type characters. So I already had the characters. Just I even used some of the real names. I had to go ask. I had to go ask some of my old playing partners that. Do you mind if I use your name in this book? And
well, I was going to ask you if somebody said, "Hey, wait a minute, that's me in the book," without their name. But so
you got to ask them up front. And I said, "Do you mind?" And to a man, they said, "No, use my name. That's great."
Cool.
So they liked it.
It's like, who wouldn't want to be in one of your books, right?
I mean, it was fun, and they enjoyed it, and they got a kick out of it.
So but it's an interesting story of behind the scenes of what you see at the front isn't necessarily what's really going on.
100%. Well, you and I have been in organizations our entire lives, right? And you know who the front people are. Hey, maybe they're great people, and they very well could be. Sometimes they are. They're wonderful people, yes. But sometimes maybe not so much. There's ego in this business, right? And we know that. And sometimes they get carried away with, hey, do you know who I am? My philosophy is, nobody really cares. They don't really care, And it's usually people in the background that really hold the entire process together. So that was the theme of one. And a caveat to One Last Fall was kind of surprising to me. When COVID hit, Netflix, people burned through all the stories on Netflix. And they're still struggling with that today. And I had somebody reach out to me, this Todd Phillips Productions. I thought it was just a scam for money. They wanted to talk to me about the book and movie production company. come on, what, you want $10,000? And then, look at it, So I didn't pay attention to it. I just, didn't answer the email, and he kept emailing. So I said, okay, I'm gonna look up Todd Phillips Productions in Hollywood,
See
California.
if this is a real thing or not, yeah.
Todd Phillips is the guy who produced all the Hangover movies.
Oh.
And War Dogs, and he's worth $500 million. And
He's a legitimate operation.
It's the real deal. And there's no guarantee, but our story had gotten good ratings. They were going through looking at the high-rated things, and they wanted me to turn it into a screenplay for them to look at. No guarantee they do anything, but they wanted to look at it, and I haven't done it yet. It's a different kind of writing, but I will eventually get around to it.
Yeah, that's another. Well, you say it's another take a chance, see what happens.
Yeah, what do you have to lose?
Open up another avenue here. So now you got two other books. We got just a couple of minutes here. We'll make sure we get to all of them. But when you looked at this other book, and I don't know which one you want to talk about next, but what would you like to?
Class of '73 was.
Right.
I really took my college experiences. I went to college a freshman in '69, graduated in '73 at Ohio Wesleyan University, a little small school on the way to Columbus, and had a great experience. And we went through basically Woodstock, Watergate. Vietnam, Kent State.
Yeah.
You add all those things in. It was a really
Yeah.
tumultuous time to be in college. So I wrote about that experience and what it was like on campus, what it was like trying to play sports during that period of time. We had some buildings burned down on our campus. The Weathermen came from Columbus, were kind of a very subversive group. They came in and burned down a couple of our buildings, and we went home for 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
not the usual college experience
and then
that people think
I
about.
had friends that, unfortunately, flunked out of school, and they ended up 2 months later, they're in Vietnam, So it was very interesting. So the whole book is about, I met my wife at senior year at school, and the whole thing is about the college experience. So, and the last one,
but we can let's
you
come
hold on.
we'll come back. We'll come back and we'll talk about Black in the Pocket, because that's a serious story. Not Class of '73 is serious as well, but Black in the Pocket it points out some things that have been difficult for American sports for a long time. Back in just a moment with author, sports personality, and all around do a little bit everything guy Tom Cole. Back in just a minute. You're with us on The Journal. Our guest is Tom Cole, local sports personality, announcer, author, coach, educator. We've talked about 3 of your books, and the one that we haven't talked about yet is the one that's over both of our shoulders. It's called Black in the Pocket. Kind of a serious book.
It is.
A little more serious than it's more historical, maybe more nonfiction than fiction. 100%. So talk about Black in the Pocket, because there's a local connection that we can obviously talk about with that as well.
Yes. I played the position at quarterback, not well, but I played it, and then I coached it for a lifetime. Probably not well, but I coached it. And it's a very difficult position to play when all things are good. I look at the Ohio State kid, no matter who you're for, he's taking the blame for that loss against Michigan. And if you really understand the quarterback position, just a quick caveat, Harrison, who's an incredible receiver, ran a drive slant, and the one thing you can't do on that is slow down or stop. He slowed down for whatever reason. The kid threw it on time.
Where it was supposed to be.
Where it was supposed to be. And with Harrison slowing down, he allowed the Michigan kid to jump the route. And then even if that happens, Harrison's job is to break it up.
Yeah, to make sure the other guy doesn't catch it then.
He didn't do it. And so it was on Harrison. And the last one he threw, he was in the pocket. He couldn't throw it away because it would have been grounding. He got pressure up the middle. He had to throw the ball. There was nothing else. So it was 4th and long.
Yeah, he had to force it somewhere.
And he got hit square. He couldn't step into the ball. He had no chance. Yeah. But people blame him for this. So the quarterback position is not an easy thing to play.
It speaks to the point, and we all know this, that the quarterback gets all the blame for it. When things go wrong, it's his or her fault.
Right.
When it goes right, it's his or her, hey, look how great you are. And in this case, unfortunately, a couple of circumstances out of his control in a couple of ways.
Steve.
But yet, he's the one with throwing the ball, so therefore it's his fault.
When I played in college, I was so bad, Steve, that my coach used to give me the wrong time when the bus was leaving, hoping that I might miss the bus.
About that.
Yeah, no. Tom, the bus is leaving at 1.
He actually left at 12:45.
Yeah. We beat him again. But it's such a tough position to play. But the history, and this is a serious book. The 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. African-American quarterbacks were not given the opportunities that they deserve. They were told that, okay, well, you're going to have to be a wide receiver.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be a defensive back, a running back, but you're not going to play quarterback. Yeah. And unfortunately, now things have paradigm has totally changed, which is great. Yeah. But those that labored in the 60s and 70s and 80s did not get very often their due. They did, help and break the ceiling for other quarterbacks. I mean, Mahomes wouldn't be Mahomes without what Doug Williams did in the Super Bowl 22. He was, at that time, it was considered, and credit Joe Gibbs, no black quarterback could take you to a Super Bowl and win it. And it's hard to imagine that people really thought like that. It's hard to get your arms around, but they did.
They did.
And Williams in that game, I think he was down early to Denver, maybe 14 points or so, and somebody hit his knee in the pocket, and he limped off. I didn't even think he was coming back in the game. They taped him up, fixed him up. He came back, and 340 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he led Washington, the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, and that changed a lot of things. But there were so many people that
preceded that
had to go through horrible situations, and they didn't get the opportunity that they deserved, and that's kind of what the book is about.
Yeah, well, and even locally, you look at the University of Toledo. Frank Lauterbur took Chuck Ely, black quarterback. That was as we know, almost. It wasn't even rare, wouldn't even be the right term for it. That was a leap beyond what coaches, even at the mid-am level, would do. And it turned out that Chuck Ely was an incredible athlete, an incredible star, an incredible leader.
Yes.
Had all the physical attributes, but also the leadership, because that was always one of a black quarterback can't really direct a team. They don't have the leadership skills. Well, he proved that, but then it took a while longer before Doug Williams showed up and actually, and it is unfortunate. You look at that and say, how could people even remotely have thought like that?
It's really hard to get your arms around that.
But it was a time where unfortunately there were a lot of people that thought that way.
100%. And the Ely, I got to know Coach Lauterbur pretty well, and I did some football camps with him, and he's a great guy, ex-Marine, pretty tough guy. Pretty tough guy.
Yeah.
And I've worked with Chuck for a long time on his foundation, and an incredible guy. But the story was with Chuck, UT never saw him play football. They were late to the dance. Coach Lauterbur, I should say, sent a scout to see Chuck play basketball. They never ever saw him throw a football pass.
Oh my gosh.
So the scout comes to watch Chuck, Portsmouth, Ohio, in Portsmouth High School, and he saw Chuck play basketball. I think that night he scored 33 points, and he shot the winning basket. The scout comes back and says, "Hey, I don't know if what he can do in football,
he's an incredible
but
basketball
he's
player.
An athlete.
Yeah,
he's an athlete."
Yep.
So Coach Lauterbur had a scholarship to give, calls Chuck in and says, "Okay, you're an athlete. We want you here at the University of Toledo." And Chuck said, "Great, I'm in." And then Coach Lauterbur said, "We're going to look at you as a defensive back, a running back, or a wide receiver." Yeah. And a pregnant pause, and Chuck said, "Coach, thanks for the scholarship." He had no other offers. But that's the integrity of Chuck Ely. He looked at the coach. He said, "Coach, thanks so much. I appreciate it." But he says, "No." He says, "I'm a quarterback. I can guarantee you."
I always have been, and that's what I want to do.
If you give me an opportunity to compete, I will win this job, and we will do well. Lauterbur kind of set him back in his chair a little bit, and he says, "All right, I'll give you a chance to compete." And the rest is history. Chuck won the job 35 games in a row. He never lost a game in high school, by the way, at quarterback.
True.
Well, he can go back. He never lost one in grade school either. So grade school, high school, college, and 3 Tangerine Bowls. And then, of course, when he graduates, you think if he came out today, he'd be a first-round draft pick, And but they weren't going to give him a chance in the NFL, and so he went to Canada, and all he did his first year in Canada is
win the Grey Cup. Win the Grey Cup,
So it's an amazing story, but they were going to change him, and it happened again and again and again to a fellow named Marlon Briscoe.
Yes,
Marlon Briscoe was one of the great athletes to ever play in the NFL, and he was a backup with the Denver Broncos. And first 2 quarterbacks got hurt. They weren't going to use him because he was African American at quarterback. And they got stuck. They put him in, and he was sensational and just was incredible. Had Denver led them to comeback wins and was their best player on the team. The next year, Steve, they traded him. They traded him to Buffalo. Now, off of that, they traded him to Buffalo, and Buffalo told him, "Hey, Marlon, you're a pretty good athlete. you're going to be a wide receiver. So they moved him to wide receiver. The only thing that worked out is that Marlon won 2 Super Bowls. He was traded from Buffalo to Miami Dolphins. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins as a wide receiver. But he was a great quarterback. One of those guys who didn't get their due.
And should have gotten a better opportunity. And even after getting the opportunity, they still went, no.
And he still did it, but they didn't. Didn't continue to use it.
Yeah, they didn't believe their eyes.
You have to ask yourself, well, what reason would that be?
Yeah.
He played great for you.
He did everything you wanted him to do, and yet, Well, and I guess part of it too, and we will never know too, all of that. But teams looked at it and said, well, what would our fan base think of that if we make somebody, make a person like that, though there's somebody, and yet, so that probably factored in too. Then they schlep him off to Buffalo, which, okay, I don't know, I'm trying to think how good Buffalo was in those days. They were okay. Decent, but they weren't, now, when you sit down to write that book, obviously, this is factual information. It's serious. Was that a challenge for you to write that? Because your other books, your Class of '73 was a story based on a lot of factual things and real people, and One Last Fall had real characters too. But this was probably a little more. This was almost like historical writing. You're laying down a story that is going to needs to be perfect, needs to be factual, needs to be on target with everything.
Very perceptive, Steve. That's exactly it. But the quarterback position had been a lifetime hobby for me. So I really knew I had followed all these careers and followed all these players and read about them my entire life. I never thinking that I was going to write a book about it. But it was kind of a hobby to me. So I knew a lot of the stories, and I always wondered too, as a younger person, why didn't Marlon Briscoe get the opportunity? It didn't make sense. Didn't make sense to me. How is this possible? And then there were others that didn't get opportunities again and again and again and again. And it was part of it. It's horrible to have to say, but a lot of times you had old white owners, and you had older white coaches who, and they truly believed, and I think, I don't know how they could have believed this, but they truly believed that their team would not follow an African American quarterback.
And there's that too,
which is absurd,
because and unfortunately we're kind of, but it does leave this because sports is supposed to be the ultimate meritocracy. And so
spot on, Steve.
So for people to overthink that and think, well, now they're going to go, that guy's really good, but no, we're not going to follow him because of some other aspect of his
100%.
character. So well, great books, Tom. I know you've got another one coming out in the spring, so we'll maybe have you come back and talk about that.
It'd be my honor. This has been great.
Great stories, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Totally my honor to be with you, Steve. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. You can check us out at WBGU.org, and of course each week on WBGU PBS. We will see you again next time on The Journal. Good night and good luck.